Great to have you along for the ride. Thanks a lot for stopping by. Really glad to have this young man on. He is from campusreform.org. His name is Peter Cordi. Peter, how are you? Good to see you.
Great. Thanks for having me on.
Really glad to have you on. You go to school at Rutgers University, a great university in New Jersey. Are you actually in New Jersey? Do you get to go to campus or not?
Yes, not sure if I'll be able to go to campus this semester because of the whole vaccine mandate and the lawsuit that's ensued as a result, but hopefully I will. Trying to finish up my degree.
Well, that was kind of a loaded answer. Lawsuit. Let's talk about that. All right. So you're going to Rutgers again. I know the university to be a good one because I like the basketball team, or back in the day. But at the end of the day, I don't know what's happening in New Jersey. I live in Texas, where we're much more open. We don't have a lot of these mask mandates or vaccine mandates. What is the university trying to do to you and your fellow students before you can go back to school? Are they trying to require a vaccine, a mask, both? What?
So both actually, Rutgers is mandating that all students take the vaccine with very limited exemptions. And those who don't comply are subject to limited on-campus privileges and weekly COVID testing. And this was actually announced after we were assured back in January that vaccinations wouldn't be required. But now, and this is probably the craziest part, even if all of your classes are online, you still have to be fully vaccinated. And if you're not, you'll be locked out of the online portal.
Yeah, that's certifiably stupid. They're literally saying if you're sitting at home and you're in the confines of your own safe space, you've got to prove that you've been vaccinated before you can go on the internet. I mean, is there some CDC study that says you can get COVID over the internet now that I don't know about?
Not that I've been told, but our legal team is arguing this from a number of angles.
Good.
So there's federal statutes, there's state statutes. The main argument, I think, so far is that it's a discrimination lawsuit, so they're using the 14th Amendment. But the most interesting thing to me is that there's a major financial conflict of interest between Rutgers and the vaccine manufacturers like Pfizer, Moderna, and Johnson and Johnson, where Rutgers is actually profiting off of this mandate and putting money over the safety and freedom of their students.
Wow.
So to me, I think it's just wild because these vaccine manufacturers can't be held liable for any injuries or deaths caused by their vaccine. So if Rutgers is forcing us to take the shot and God forbid something goes wrong, who's responsible? Like, think about it. If you weren't going to get the vaccine, but now you don't have a choice and something happens to you as a result,
Right.
who's at fault here? Currently nobody. So how's that for justice?
No, it's a great question. And also, this isn't FDA approved. This is emergency usage only. But I love, Peter, I love the argument that it's the 14th Amendment. Gay marriage is legal in this country because of the 14th Amendment. Those who were advocating for gay marriage said, wait a second, you can get married in Hawaii, you can get married in Vermont. Why can't gay people get married in Texas and Florida and everywhere else? So they took it to the Supreme Court that agreed that you have to have laws that provide equal justice. So when Texas had in its constitution marriages between one man and one woman, that was challenged, and the challenge won because of the 14th Amendment. So COVID restrictions and mandates and vaccines and masks and everything else, that is the way it is in New York City. That's the way it is in Hawaii, but it's not the way it is in Texas, not the way it is in Florida. Sounds like that is the way it is in New Jersey. So via the 14th Amendment, this sounds like an easy win, right?
Well, according to the Supreme Court, what should happen for a mandate like this to be constitutional by their interpretation. Now, keep in mind, this interpretation is 100 years old,
Right.
so it is a little old. But what needs to happen is that the state needs to pass a law. You can't just have public universities pass these mandates like this. And that's one of the things that we're arguing. There's been legal victories and legal defeats, unfortunately, with these mandatory vaccine lawsuits. We're really hopeful, though. We do have some unique positions on it. We have some students who have the antibodies. I'm not one of them, but we do have some students who have
Right.
had COVID and they have the antibodies. So why are they going to take the vaccine? They're already immune.
Yeah, and Amy Coney Barrett, unfortunately, recently actually took the side that you're talking about with Indiana. It was very, very strange. It is Peter Cordi. He is a correspondent from campusreform.org. Get to campusreform.org every single day and go check out the great stories they're covering. Let's get into some of these stories. And do me a favor, brother. Keep me updated on that lawsuit. I think that's very, very interesting, okay?
You got it.
All right, University of Michigan professor says math and science classes are racist. Who doesn't know that, Peter? Of course they're racist.
Of course they are. The teacher actually claims that they're dominated by the boogeymans of whiteness and racism. But let me ask you, what color do you see when you think of long division or the quadratic formula Is there a
I see red because it's annoying to try
yeah,
to do it. And,
exactly.
listen, this is a great point. Why are they, let me ask you a better question because it's stupid.
Yeah.
Of course, it's not racist. Why are they saying that it is? What do they benefit by saying that?
To be honest, it's all about divide and conquer, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So campus reforms actually reported on a number of other instances in places like California and Oregon where whole curriculums have been changed on the basis that math is racist because it requires a right answer. So I guess according to those liberals out west, only white people can figure out the right answer. And
Wow.
in my opinion, this spits on the face of our long history of black intellectuals. Black mathematicians like Benjamin Banneker, David Blackwell, Gladys West. I think statements like these take away from their accomplishments and imply that they too are facilitating whiteness and racism with their contributions to society. And it's just, like I said, another attempt by the left to divide us up into groups and turn everybody against each other while making whiteness a symbol for racism, while they're the ones perpetuating the soft bigotry of low expectations by thinking
Yeah.
black people are inherently incapable of math. And the same goes for the Democrats' relentless attacks on voter ID laws, as if somehow black people don't know how to get an ID or use the internet, as Joe Biden said. So who's the real racist here?
No, it's true. Joe Biden said that blacks and Hispanics can't go on the internet and figure out where to vote. He also said they couldn't get lawyers and they couldn't get accountants. He said, I think Kamala Harris said they don't know how to photocopy anything. So at the end of the day, you've got the same exact party that historically has looked down on blacks and Hispanics and other than whites, doing the same thing today, then claiming that it's the other side. What's interesting about this story, though, about the math is it started with, and they called it Common Core. With Common Core, you could see 2 plus 2, and if Bobby says, well, I feel like it's 7 today, the teacher would be like, that's great, and don't even show us how you got there. We accept your answer as roundabout near 4. It started that way, but now they're going full on and calling it white supremacy or racism. And I'm actually kind of glad they are, Peter, because blacks and Hispanics and others will look at that and say, okay, now you're being stupid and you're calling us less than. We're not going to accept your garbage. I like when the Democrats and the liberals go too far because they always expose themselves. It's Peter Cordi from campusreform.org. Independent journey with anti-racism is now a job requirement at Bard. What does that mean? Independent journey with anti-racism.
So what that means is, so at Bard College, they're requiring their employees to commit to anti-racism and to support the school's collaboration on diversity, equity, and inclusion. But note, equality is no longer one of those buzzwords they like to use.
Right.
So this clearly leaves no room for employees who don't subscribe to this ideology, and they're obviously not being treated with equality. So policies like this enforce moral value on just political opinions, meaning you can't disagree, or else you're not just wrong, you're a bad person, or else you're a racist. They're actually, the crazy thing is they're requiring this for hourly positions, making under $20 an hour. So even at the entry level, this school is indoctrinating their staff. So to work at Bard College, you have to believe that black people are inherently depressed and oppressed and at a disadvantage, while white people are inherently privileged and are responsible for everyone else's shortcomings, that all of our institutions are racist and keep minorities down while propping up white people. This is what anti-racism is, and
Right.
it's completely discriminatory against white people and conservatives who have valid reasons for believing that our institutions are not inherently racist, that the police are not just hunting down and killing minorities, that your success in life is not determined by your race, and frankly, that you ought to judge a person by the content of their character and not the color of their skin.
Oh, that's crazy. Come on. And by the way, I'm glad that you defined anti-racism because anti-racism isn't really anti-racism. Anti-racism is admitting white privilege, white supremacy, and institutional racism. That's what it is. You have to admit those 3 things or else you're not anti-racist. And the most racist people on the planet are the ones calling white people bad because, of course, that's racism when you do that. But if they call it something different, it's okay. It's almost like calling something that nobody can afford the Affordable Care Act. It's kind of like that. It is. It's Peter Cordi, and I appreciate you coming on, Peter. Rutgers University is where you go to school. What year are you in?
So I'm actually a 5th-year senior.
Nice.
Just trying to finish up a couple credits so that I can start my career.
You're going to be a lawyer? You sound like a lawyer.
I'd love to. Maybe. Politician, lawyer, who knows?
Yeah, that would be good.
I love to do what you do.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that. You're doing just fine right now. Let's slip in one last story here. It turns out calling a woman female is somehow sexist. Now, again, I'm old school. I'm not a boomer. I'm just out. I'm Generation X, but I still think that women and girls are female. Did I go wrong here?
No, I think science is on your side with that. A student in where else but California wrote an op-ed calling for society to stop using the term female because it's dehumanizing and sexist against women. But there's really no reason to stop there
I don't
logically.
understand. I
If
don't get it.
female is sexist, then woman's getting banned next. To me, this says more about the student's view of women and less about society at large. Because if you really think the term female is a bad word, maybe you're just a tad sexist yourself. But the Leadership Institute's campus forum has reported on a number of stories like this, including Harvard University replacing the word woman with birthing person.
Stop
But
it.
surely you'd think at Harvard, of all places, they would know that not all women can give birth. So, how is this inclusive to those with medical conditions that make them infertile? We all know someone in our own lives who has to deal with this, and it's not easy for anyone. So, now this puts infertile women in the same category as male to female transgender individuals. I wonder how they feel about that. Where do you draw the line?
That's good stuff. Peter, it's good. So I got to tell you something. There's something very, very nutsy cuckoo about somebody saying, calling 50% of society female, because they are, calling them that is somehow demeaning, is somehow less than, is somehow looking down our noses at them, or I don't know. It blows my mind. And by the way, birthing people doesn't make any sense. Let me say something that's radical that they're going to freak out about at Rutgers. There is no man, no biological man can give birth. Period. End of story. It's never happened. It probably never will unless you somehow mutate somebody. Any person who's calling himself a man who's giving birth is really female, and that's human sex and biology, and it's unwavering. I'll give you a closing comment on dealing with nut jobs like this when you go to school in New Jersey or California or wherever. Do you just give them the truth like you just did? Are you sarcastic like you just were? How do you deal with it?
I like to ask more questions
Yeah.
than anything else. I don't think people respond well by just spitting a bunch of facts at them. I mean, there's a time and a place for that, and that's YouTube. But when you're talking and having conversations with people, the first thing I like to do is ask them, "What do you mean by that?" And let them really tell me what they mean, because half the time they don't know what the heck they're talking about, and they can realize that sometimes. And from there, I'll ask them, then how did you get to that conclusion? And when they spell out their logic, no longer can they move the goalposts anymore. And
Right.
again, a lot of those people then realize, I really don't have such good reasons for believing what I believe.
Well,
And
and their logic is, I've been told, I heard, my mom said, my boyfriend said, my friend said, the professor said, and they really don't have any meat to it. What I love about people your age, and I think that it's much more prevalent with people your age than my age, is that you're still open to hearing both sides. The problem is at university, they're not getting both sides, are they?
No, they're not. It's all leftist propaganda. I mean, going back to that Bard College story there, George Soros gave that school $500 million.
Wow.
$500 million to facilitate that ideology. And it's people like that who pay to support the indoctrination of academics and students alike. This is exactly how we lose our culture to Marxism. It all starts at the schools. I know you have kids. And when you send your kids to college, just know they're going to be fed propaganda sponsored by billionaire radical leftists who fund the BLM riots and other destabilizing groups overseas.
It's crazy, and those watching and listening will take heed of that as well. It's Peter Cordi. Go find out more about him at campusreform.org, campusreform.org. Peter, you want to put out your social media, your Twitter or something before we go?
Sure, you can find me at Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, whatever, at Peter Cordi.
Perfect. It's Cordi, and the first name spelled exactly as it sounds. Peter, thanks a million. Let's do it again, my friend.
Thank you. Anytime.
All right, brother. We're back after this. Stay right here.